Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's me, Monica, again, and welcome everyone to the live experience. It's a live show session. We are going to show you about Lumbini, which is the birthplace of Lord Buddha, and also in Lumbini, you will get to see another Buddhist site. So, as I just said, that the Lumbini is the birthplace of Lord Buddha, and also it is a Buddhist pilgrimage place site that you will get to see many people from India, from Thailand. They will go and visit. So with me today, I actually have Mr. Anil who will show you more. But before going that, just to inform everyone that Lumpini was made a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1997. So in Lumpini, not only the temple that you will get to see, which is the Buddhist style, like Thai Buddhist style temple, but as well as you will also get to see a different Buddhist style, whether it's a um, Korean, whether it's a Sri Lankan, whether it's a different side of the Buddhist, like what I just said, that is a Buddhist side. So yeah, Mr. Anil is going to show you more on that. And Mr. Anil, can I have you? Mr. Anil?
Sure.
Yeah, he's here. So yeah, he's going to show us. Okay, great. Welcome, Mr. Anil. And thank you so much for taking out time to show us the beautiful side of Lumbini.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, welcome to everybody, in these circumstances, where we are all, basically online, trying to enjoy the world. And so what I'm going to do is, share my screen. And, I hope, can you see the, the screen that I'm sharing here?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay. So, first of all, everybody please relax, sit back and, enjoy this tour of Lumbini. And so the first picture I have is this brand new airport, that is being constructed. Now for tourism, for many, many years, everybody has been complaining that in order to grow, you really need, world-class infrastructure. And so what you see here in the picture is what you will see when you arrive in Lumbini is a brand new airport, of course, called the Gautam Buddha International Airport. And so this airport is very critical for the promotion of Lumbini because when you say Lumbini, it is not just the birthplace of the Buddha, but it is now going to basically connect you to Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha attained enlightenment. It's going to connect you to Sarnath, where he gave his first sermon, and then also to Kusinagar, where he passed away at the age of 80. Now, if you look at the bigger, Buddhist circuit, we hope to link Taxila, which is in present-day Pakistan, and Nalanda, which is in India, and then Xi'an, which is in China. Now, these three sites are very critical because in the last 2,600 years, they were the world's, most, prestigious learning centers. And so the whole idea of using Lumbini then to provide a connectivity to these sites is what is going to make, Lumbini and the airport and the infrastructure, very important. So what I'm going to do is say, first of all, you just heard that, Lumbini is a World Heritage Site. Now, what you see here on the screen is basically the inscription that the most, popular visitor, this is 2,300 years ago. So his name is Emperor Ashok, and from the Mauryan dynasty, who visited Lumbini. Now, what is very fascinating about Buddhism and Ashok is that he was a very violent emperor, and he had basically created an empire based on the sword. So using violence, to create this. Now, this person basically changed his ways, inspired by the teachings of the Buddha. And so to mark the 20th year of his coronation, Ashok decided to visit Lumbini 2,300 years ago. And so what you see on the screen is the inscription that he left behind 2,300 years ago. Now, if you read the Brahmi Lipi that you see on the screen, basically the translation would go like, to mark the 20th year of my coronation, I visited the birth of the Buddha. And so it goes on, but the last sentence is very important because it says that in order to preserve the birthplace of the Buddha, I have reduced the tax for the local people of Luminigram to 1 upon 8. So why do we know, or how do we know the birthplace of the Buddha today? It is because of a tax incentive given by an emperor, 2,300 years ago. So this pillar is what basically marks, the birthplace of the Buddha, or is the proof. Now, what we'll do is, basically given that we know, where the Buddha was born, so the decision was made to develop a master plan, around Lumini. So if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you will see a circular pond and then a red, square in the middle. And so that's where the pillar is located. But from that area, if you look north, which is towards the left of your screen, you will see a canal, and then basically going to the, the service area, or what we call the Lumini village. And in the middle is the monastic zone. So the total area of this Lumini master plan is 5 miles by 1 mile. And so this is what we call the sacred garden. And then of course, in our conversation, I'll show you that Lumini itself is much bigger than that. But this is the planned, master plan. And so Kenzo Tange, the very famous Japanese architect, put his team together. And so this is the master plan that is created. Now, what does this mean in real life? So look at this. So this is a short aerial view. And so if you look at the white building, and then if you look at the pillar that stands just in front of the building, so that's the Ashok pillar. Inside the white building are two things that are amazing. So one is, so when Ashok visited Lumbini, his teacher Upagupta basically points at a marker stone and says, the emperor, this stone is the marker stone, that marks the exact place where the Buddha was born. And so in history, this little sentence or a conversation between the teacher and the emperor is noted. But can you imagine the Nepalese government and the people actually decided, why don't we excavate a site to see if the stone was still there? And so the excavation happened, the stone is still there. And so one of the amazing things about visiting Lumbini is to go into that temple and to see this stone that actually marks the exact birthplace of the Buddha. Now the complex is known as the Maya Devi temple, and that of course is dedicated to the Buddha's mother. And so inside you will also see what we call a nativity statue. And so it basically depicts Maya Devi holding on to the branch of a sal tree, giving birth to the Buddha. Now, if you just look to the little right of that building, you'll see the pond. And so that pond, again, is historically the pond where Maya Devi gave a bath to the newborn baby. And so today, Nepalese, we take great pride in the fact that we've been able to preserve, the entire history and the proof of the birth of the Buddha. And so this becomes, your central, part of what you will see when you visit Lumini. Now, I'm going to take you a little, further out. So many, many years of effort has gone into protecting and preserving Lumini so that the whole world, can come and basically enjoy and also learn about the teachings, about the life, and basically how to lead a life without suffering. So the whole idea is that the central theme of Buddhism is dukkha nirodha, which literally means how to live a life, without suffering. And so the fact that today we've inherited this site after 2,600 years, we want to ensure that the site is protected for another 2,600 years. And so one of the threats, to this site, so basically this is the monsoon. So we have a lot of rain. And so this site is in the Nepal Tarai, which is the plains. And so not only does it rain a lot, but all the water that comes off the mountains, off the hills would come here. And so there is always a danger that the water will damage, these historical sites. So this circular levee, that you saw in the earlier, master plan is basically a way to drain the water, off the temple so that it remains intact, for future generations. So what we also need to understand is that the master plan is made not just aesthetically to make the place beautiful, but it is basically designed to make sure that the site is protected for hopefully, perpetuity, but if not, at least for another 2,600 years, so that the future generation can really enjoy this place. So it's a huge, area, as you can see. So now the beauty, of going to Lumini, of course, is from the Mayadevi temple, there is a walk that you can take along the central canal. Now this canal, which is basically the central sort of spine, of the master plan. So Buddhism in 2600 years has evolved into two schools. So the first school is what we call Theravada, or basically Buddhists who basically try to emulate the life and the teachings of the Buddha. And so countries like Thailand, Cambodia, Sri Lanka, basically they practice Theravada Buddhism, which basically means that you try to emulate, the life of the Buddha. Now, over the centuries, there was a new school of Buddhism known as Mahayana, Buddhism. Now, in the West, people use the word compassion in many ways, but it is very simple when we think of, basically a person who is on the path that the Buddha articulated. But when you reach a stage in your life, when you say, I can also become a Buddha myself, but then you stop, you turn around, you go back to bring everybody along. So this new school of Buddhism was basically articulated to say that if you use the teachings of the Buddha to become a Buddha yourself, that sounds very selfish. You should use the teachings to go back to bring everybody along. So this evolved into a new school of Buddhism known as Mahayana Buddhism. And so the canal basically separates the Theravada countries' monasteries and the Mahayana countries' monasteries. And so just to give you a little sample, so for example, you mentioned already, so this is the Chinese, monastery. And so, every country has basically built these structures to celebrate, Buddhism in their own countries. Now, the beauty of the master plan was that it was able to accommodate monasteries from 44 countries. And so, these monasteries basically become a very beautiful sight, to enjoy, because you suddenly see a microcosm of Buddhism all around the world in this one, 5 square mile, area. So just to give you, another sample. So this is the German built monastery. And so, basically what we're talking about is all these monasteries that are within walking distance, but on the two sides of this canal along which, you will be walking. So it's 44 monasteries. So Theravada on one side and Mahayana, on the other side. Now, when we look at the life of the Buddha, so as a young person, there are many stories that are told and retold in history. So one of those stories is his cousin basically went on a hunting trip, and he had basically shot a crane, a Saras crane, using an arrow. The Buddha, as a child, basically decided that the animal should not lose its life, and so tried to save, the life of this crane. And so when the two kids, took the injured crane to the parents, the father basically decided that the crane belonged to the Buddha because he actually tried to save its life. Now imagine this incident is recorded 2600 years ago, but today, the red-napped crane that you see on the screen basically flies from Siberia in Russia, through China, through the Kali Gandaki Valley between Annapurna and Dholagiri, Himalayas, and then comes to breed at Lumini. So one thing that we have to understand is that Lumini is just not stones and rocks and proof of the birth of the Buddha, but it is also a very living, place. And so it is one thing to say that the Buddha saved the life of a crane 2600 years ago, but today to be able to also present Lumini as a crane sanctuary, or a place where the cranes feel safe to fly into and breed and to rest, lay their eggs, and then fly back, with their siblings. And so this is an amazing piece of conservation work, because to keep 2600 years of natural history alive is something that, again, we take great pride in. And so in Lumbini, please do not just spend time looking at man-made or built structures, but to really enjoy, the environment and the natural heritage, of that place. So now this is the most, important part of Lumbini. And so those who, are familiar with words in Pali or in Sanskrit will know the word Shraddha. Now the word Shraddha is very important, and in today's world of pandemics, in a world of chaos, world of racism, so all these things. So the story that we often tell in Nepal is that there was a village that was going through a drought, and so somebody decided that we need a prayer meeting to bring rain. And so, of course, the villagers all got together, and so they organized a prayer meeting, to bring rain. Now, the critical part of the story is that everybody came to the prayer meeting to bring rain, but only one small child brought an umbrella. So the point is, it is one thing to organize a prayer meeting for rain, but to actually have faith that because of my prayer, the rain will come is a very different thing. So Lumini is not just the birthplace of the Buddha. It is not just a place for this unique natural habitat, but it is the place where for 2,600 years, people have practiced Shraddha. So one of the things that you will see people doing in Lumbini is lighting these butter lamps. And so there are about 80 different rituals that you will see that people are performing. And so one of them is the butter lamp. And so the symbolism of lighting a butter lamp is very critical, because the way the teachings of the Buddha will spread, around the world is like using one lamp then to light other lamps. So basically one lamp being able to light many other lamps. And so what we need to understand is no matter how many lamps you light, you do not lose any of your luminity. So no matter how much I share the words of the Buddha, I'm not going to lose any of it. In fact, it grows. But the beauty of using the butter lamp also is that after some time, the butter will run out. And so it's not like you can do this forever. And so what a beautiful way to teach impermanence, because you cannot do this forever. Life will end. And so the whole idea of the Buddha's youth is that the three sightings, that he saw. So he saw a person with a disease. He saw a person who was decaying. And then thirdly, he saw a dead body. And so these three sights basically, made him ask a lot of questions. And so those questions led him to basically come up with these paths or these ways by which we can all live a life without suffering. And so today, when you think of rituals, how do you express Shraddha, to the Buddha? It is by lighting these lamps. So as I mentioned, there are 80, different ways that we've recorded in which people show Shraddha to the Buddha. So for example, some people offer marigold, flowers. Some people offer, money. You'll see groups of, people who will also offer gold foil, which they basically paste on the bricks. So everybody has different ways. Some chant, some play drums. And so the whole master plan of Lumbini is to accommodate all the different ways in which people show Shraddha. So Lumbini has come back again and again in history, because for 2,600 years, people from far away have always been visiting. And so last year, to mark the New Year's Day in Nepal, I was in Lumbini. And on that day, if you can imagine, 32,000 locals, visit to the birth site. And so every year, every day, you'll see people coming here to express their Shraddha. So just to bring this all together, I want you to really understand that Lumini is the place where you have the proof of the birth of the Buddha. It is the place where the natural history of the time of the Buddha has survived for 2,600 years. But it is also the place where thousands and thousands of people have been traveling for 2,600 years to basically show respect or Shraddha to the Buddha. Now, I'm just going to show you that Lumini is much more than just the birthplace of the Buddha. So this is a very typical painting that you see in Kathmandu. Many people will have this, sort of distemper, watercolor painting on the walls in their homes. And this painting is very important because after attaining, enlightenment, so the Buddha's parents invited him back to visit his home. And so this is an artist's, depiction of the Buddha coming back to Lumbini after he attains, enlightenment. And then what we need to understand is that the Buddha, as he got closer to his home, basically said, I do not want to enter the palace. I do not want to enter the home because it would bring back a lot of my childhood memories. And so what the parents did was basically built a monastery where the Buddha and all his disciples who were traveling with him could rest. And so this site, basically marks the place where the Buddha now meets his parents, meets his wife, and then meets his child, Rahul. And so the conversation between the family is an amazing, text to look at. But then if you visit Lumbini, so all the remains of those sites, so whether it is the palace, whether it is the hall, whether it is the monastery, So all of these places exist even today. So nowhere in our mindset, should we say that Lumini is only the birthplace of the Buddha, but it is much more than the birthplace of the Buddha. And so I would easily, recommend that 3-4 nights or 5-6 days you can easily spend in Lumbini and around Lumbini, because there's a lot to see, a lot to enjoy. So another example would be, everybody must have heard the story of how he takes his horse to go into the forest, at the age of 29, to basically try to start meditating to find this new path. So the site where the horse comes back refuses to enter the palace. And then basically the horse sits at the gate of the palace and starves himself to death. And so Lumini is also the place where you can see where his horse came back and then starved himself to death. So there are so many emotional places that you can see. Now, post, the Buddha's life. So if all of you remember, once the Buddha passed away, the 8 republics, basically decided to divide the ashes, the flowers, after the cremation. And so 8 stupas, so 8 structures were built to basically house the remains of the Buddha. So out of those 8, 7 were dug up by Emperor Ashok, and then all the remains were basically redistributed into 84,000 portions. And so that is why when we travel through Sumatra, when we travel through Java, when we travel to Sri Lanka, you see Ashok stupas, because each one of those stupas contains 1/84,000th of the remains of the Buddha and the ashes. But there was one stupa, so out of 8, that the local people did not allow Ashok to dig up. And so that 8th stupa is also in Lumbini. And so the environment, the whole space around Lumbini is really a place where you can learn about the life of the Buddha, you can learn about the teachings of the Buddha, but then also this whole history of what happened, after the age of 80 when the Buddha actually passed away. So it's really, an open invitation for everybody to come and visit, Lumbini. We have the airport, we have the master plan, we have all these, structures. Now, just to, bring this to a close, and then the whole idea is, we can have some questions, answers. But this is the Bodha Stupa in Kathmandu. And so when you think of Lumbini, that's where the Buddha was born. That's the site that connects, Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, and Kushinagar in India. But then look at Kathmandu, where you have these amazing, Buddhist sites. So when you think of, Bodha, the stupa at Bodha, so imagine in the 5th century, there were people in Kathmandu basically praying that their children become teachers of Buddhism in Tibet. And so imagine Lumbini, Kathmandu, and then Tibet. And so this stupa was built by a mother, who said, I aspire that my children, become teachers of Buddhism in Tibet. And so in 644 AD, Tibet got its Buddhism through the wedding of a devout Nepali Buddhist girl by the name of Brikuti to the Tibetan emperor by the name of Srongchang Gampo. And so this wedding in 644 AD is what gave Tibet its Buddhism. So one way to also understand Lumbini is that from Lumbini it connects to Kathmandu, from Kathmandu it connects to Tibet, and from Tibet it probably connects to the rest of the world. And so, the way of, really enjoying, Lumbini is to look at it not just from the ground level, but also from a sort of a hot air balloon, where you can rise up and then look at the entire, South Asian map, and to see today, where Buddhism, has spread, and, how far it has gone. So this last, visual, that I'm going to show you is what Lumbini looks like at night. And so in my last, visit to Lumbini, there was a group of, monks, who had come from Italy, and they had brought new lights. And so these were amazing lights which do not attract insects. It doesn't attract moth. And I'm just amazed to have a conversation with a group of people who said, we would like to light the birthplace of the Buddha, but we would like to use lights that do not attract and kill any insects. And so imagine, today, the way people show their respect to the Buddha, the way people practice the teachings of the Buddha. And I think it's just a beautiful thing that, today when you visit Lumbini, you'll be able to really enjoy the environments, both during the day, but also, at night. So this is a long, story, but in a virtual world, I hope I have given you enough information so that you can ask me a lot of questions. And so let's enter, the Q&A session. And then at the end, we also have a promotional video made by the tourism board here in Nepal, so that we can actually, encourage you. And if you have not decided to visit, the birthplace of the Buddha once in your lifetime, then hopefully that promotional video will get you there. So let me, stop the share, open up the screen, and let's see how we can technologically, basically do this Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anil, for showing us more story to it. I'm sure that many of us have known about Lord Buddha, but thank you once again for taking it in depth so that we can learn more. Yes, like what Mr. Anil said, that we are welcome the question. So if you have any question, please drop them on the Q&A box. You will actually see it down on your Zoom. You can just type in. Mr. Anil, we actually do have one question. It's not exactly a question. It's from Melody. She wanted to know, sorry, the person wanted to know that can she get the presentation so that I can also share it to my client and travel agency business partner. Yeah,
Yes.
she's from Philippines. So I think I suppose that she meant to all the images that you showed just now.
Yes, so yeah, we will be very happy to make it available. And then, because this is being recorded, so we can put it as it is, but then also make sure that you have the images that you can then share later on. Yeah, no, in fact, thank you very much. It'll be very helpful, to promote this amazing place.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Anil. So Melody, after this session, by next week, when we have things ready, we are going to share it. So you mean that it is okay to share the images with all the delegate, right?
Yes, yes.
Great. So to everyone, we will actually share it. I got one. Once again, please let me repeat. If you have any question, please drop them at the Q&A box. There was one question that came in that how has the organization for visit changed because of COVID? I think they meant that had the COVID affected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just share more on this changes right now that we have?
Sure.
Yeah.
So like, all countries in the world, so Nepal has also gone through a long lockdown. And then now, because we have been able to flatten the curve, the usual, controls, and so getting, the health system up and running. But, tourism is one of those areas, where it depends on disposable income. It depends on the state of, the disease back home. And so it will be a slow, start. But on the Nepali side, we're going to use this opportunity to build and upgrade these airports. We're upgrading these sites so that as the visitors, pick up, we will be able to, really give people, really a nice, state. So we're not wasting our time. We are using this, period to upgrade, ourselves. And so the moment the flights, start, so Nepal will be ready, to host people here.
Great. Thank you. And by when do you expect the airport to be done?
So this, is something that in the Asian culture and the Nepali culture, so if, the Chinese president or the Indian prime minister was to visit tomorrow, I think we can have it ready in 24 hours. But if not, then it usually takes 6 to 8 months to get things done. So this is the Asian culture where, we can respond very quickly, but we also love to take our time. But otherwise the infrastructure is ready. And so, the airport itself is functional, but we will have to wait, for the flights to become regular now.
Of course, of course. Yeah, like what from the images that you showed is already look like almost done. Another famous question that I guess this one is like, I'm just asking because I know I have been hearing people ask in another different thing. I'm sure people would want to know on this as well that now with the new normal that you are going to build more new thing with the full hygiene and sanitize, you think there will be increase in the price? Like there will be a changes into the higher price, like, like in order to cope up with the new normal?
So price itself, should not be a variable, but what will change? And so this is the larger conversation we are having is that Nepal, for example, has, basically set aside 23% of its land area, as protected, space. And so the COVID-19, if it teaches us anything, basically we have to share the earth, with other beings. And so we cannot encroach the habitat of the virus, so this is not the only virus, we will have future virus. And so I think the world can really learn from Nepal in terms of setting aside natural areas. Now, climate change. So basically, if you look at ancient history, everything had to move east-west because things could not move north-south because of, temperature. But climate change has made sure that the virus can move north-south as well. And so basically having a zero emission economy is something that we all have to strive for. And then look at pollution. So it is air pollution that has made us vulnerable to respiratory diseases. So in the future, we have to say, we have to conserve biodiversity, we have to make sure climate change is tackled, and we have to ensure that air pollution is minimized. And we have to learn to live on Earth with other beings, including viruses. And so it's those kinds of things that we really need to highlight. The price itself, should not be a variable.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I'm just asking on the behalf of others because I'm sure that they would be a little worried about it, which is, to be honest, it's general for people to be. I think I got more question. One second. Melody said, I have been working with several tourism officer and embassy in supporting a number of tourist destinations through several marketing. I had project for the tourism. Can I get this? Okay, sure, Melody. I will send you the detail and maybe I can connect you with Mr. Anil on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that question is gone. I'll just go to the next one. Hi, Mr. Anil. Could you elaborate more on what you said about Nepal, Kathmandu, and Tibet being tied together? I could not quite understand. Does it mean that we should visit all these three countries as well to understand some perspective of the Buddha's life?
Yes, so the answer is that, today we have political maps and political boundaries. And so when you think of India, the last time the Indian borders were drawn was only in 1947. And then we are talking about, sites that go back 2,600 years. So, what we really need to understand is that the 1947 maps, do not do justice to things that happened 2,600 years ago. And so it is very important for the visitor to look at the entire region. And so in fact, what I was saying was that it is very important to look at Taxila in Pakistan, where for 1100 years, Buddhism thrived in Pakistan. We have to look at Xi'an in China, from where, if you think of all the Buddhist texts, that were destroyed in India, are now being retranslated from the monasteries in Xi'an. And then think of Nalanda, one of the greatest universities in Buddhism during the 7th century. And so we cannot say that it is in Pakistan, it is in India, or Luminy is in Nepal. So it is very important for the visitor to start looking at the bigger map and think of the world as it might have looked like 2,600 years ago, and not be biased by what the world looks like after 1947.
Okay, thank you. So you meant to, okay, so I think they might have already understood. Geeta, I think that answer your question, that he's trying to just emphasize or look at the big picture rather than just go on where is it exactly where it is. Because it's everywhere, right? To focus on the teaching more than just focus on where was it and all, right?
Right.
Great. Is there more? We actually do have time. So if you have any of the question that you would like to ask related to this session or anything related to Lumbini, we have Mr. Anil here to answer the question. So you were saying that all the Buddhist sites are all like walking distance nearby each other in Lumbini, right?
Right. So the point being, and so, later on we can share with you, so the 5 square miles, right? So this is, the confusion that we create is that the Japanese architect Kenzo Tange was given the job of basically creating a master plan only for the 5 mile by 1 mile. But the area around it have many more sites. So for example, the place where the Buddha met his parents and saw his wife and his children, after this long meditation, is a place called Kudan, which is just west, of the 5 square miles. And so what we really need to, send the message is that Lumini is not 5 square miles. And in fact, if you go online, there is a whole new map that is currently being developed called the Greater Lumini master plan. And so it is very important to say that Lumini is not 5 square miles, it is much more.
So, mean that when you go to Lumbini, there's actually much more to explore than just a 5 mile
5
that you
square,
are saying,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Okay. So, is there any further question to this one? Mr. Anil, I don't think so that we have receive any question, but thank you so much for like explaining, especially in depth, of the Lumpini and as well as like about Lord Buddha life, about the importance of Lumpini, about cranes that already there and everything. With this, would you like to wrap up on this before we show them the beautiful video?
So very good. So hopefully, after listening and participating in a session like this, I hope I have raised more questions than answers, because it is through the questioning culture that will force you to buy the air ticket and then come to Lumini, because it's going to be much enriching to actually be at the site. So I just want to thank everybody for joining this session, and of course to Pata for organizing, because in this virtual world, it's not an easy feat to bring all these peoples and ideas together. Now, the point that we just have to highlight, of course, is that if you look at the politics of today's world, where people and politicians seem to be very inward looking, and so they really want to just take care of themselves, they want to take care of only their own people. I think the world will be very peaceful and very beautiful if we all travel much more and we learn about other places, other people, and how we basically arrived at where we are today. And so Lumini is one of those destinations that everybody should put in their bucket list and make sure that once in their lifetime they do come, because it will help us create a much more peaceful world than the one that we're living in today. Thank you.
Mr. Anil, actually, I won't let you say thank you yet because we have received very interesting few questions. Let me just quickly go through them. We actually
Sure.
received this one. Is there any, is the site accessible for people with disability?
The answer is yes. And so this is one of those things that I mentioned, where, the way the ramps have to be done, the way, the people actually have to travel. And so also, the whole place is now being serviced with electric vehicles. But yes, so the sites are all accessible. And so Nepal, in a strange way, in the recent times, so whether we're building a bank ATM machine or, we're building anything, so that accessibility is a non-negotiable. And so, yes, the hotels, in fact, and I've been to many of them where even the toilets, even the access to, the amenities, so all of them have been designed, for accessibility.
Okay, thank you. And is the town of Lumpini, actually, before going to this one, I would like to go to this one. As for this is again same from Melody, who was asking for the slide. She said that, what do you think is the unique factor that we can tell our client, as their requirement is for mice, right? So what do you think is the unique factor that we can tell their client so that they will choose Nepal instead of other destination?
Well, first of all, you should not choose Nepal over other destinations. You should choose all of them. I think, every, place has its own unique feature. But Nepal is one of those, very special places where, so for example, if you look at Lumbini, right, so it is about 100 meters above sea level. And then if you look north of Lumini, you can actually see the Annapurnas, which are about 9,000 meters above sea level. So where in the world can you take a picture of a crane with the Annapurnas as your backdrop? So I think, it's one of those places where a lot of the ecosystems that you find around the world, it is somehow squeezed, into a very small place. And then, all the superlatives. So for example, the birthplace of Buddha in Lumbini, the highest mountain, Sagarmatha, in Nepal. So I think Nepal in this small geography has a lot, but while promoting Nepal, I would definitely encourage that you also visit all the sites, but come to Nepal first.
Thank you. And how far is the airport from the site?
So very good. So currently there's an 8-lane highway actually being constructed from the airport to Lumbini. And so with the new highway, it should be about a 20-minute drive. The current 2-lane highway, say about 30 to 35 minutes. And so we do it very often, but it's being replaced by this very fast track, so 8-lane. And so it should not be more than 20 minutes drive, from the airport to Lumini.
And how about the hotel and the restaurant and all? Are they all near the site or like a bit further?
Yes, so they're all around, but outside those 5 square miles. And so there's a whole range of hotels. And as you can imagine, the monasteries that you saw, also have a lot of space for monasteries, for monks. And so there's a lot of good facilities. So whether you're a pilgrim or whether you're a high-end, tourist. And so what I would just suggest is you go to Lumini, just Google Lumini, and then you look at it, but there's a whole good, range of hotels. Now, the nearest large town is Bhairahawa, where the town is. And so there are even more hotels there. But Lumini itself, has sufficient, beds, for the visitor. And then, like you said, the price, the range. So there's quite a good variety, for that.
So basically people can get to choose whatever range
exactly.
they want, whether they want to go for luxury or they want to go as only like a pilgrimage and then just come.
Yeah.
That's great. This session, as I said, that is actually very interesting session. And with the question that we received, right now we don't have, I think we are actually almost ending with the session. So with this, I would like to thank Mr. Anil for showing us actually the site and with the depth detail about Lord Buddha, the place, the infrastructure, the hotel, the accommodation and everything. And I hope that he have answered everybody's question, but not to worry. For the presentation today, it will also be in the website, and as well as we will actually share it with everyone. We will send an email to everyone after the session. So please stay with us on this. And if you have any further query, you can always write to Mr. Anil directly. Mr. Anil, would you like to share your detail more on this so people can connect to you?
Yes, so always, the link that you had for the Nepal Tourism Board, so that's, so it should be your key link, whether it's visas, whether it's permits, whether it's update on COVID-19. So the NTB site is where you would go. But for me, if you just use my name, so Anil Chitrakar. So Anil Chitrakar, I'll put it up, and then at gmail.com. And so you can always contact me. But always go to the Nepal Tourism Board website because you'll get the updated information on Nepal. And then, I can always, get access if there are questions. And so there's a whole department here, that will make sure that we are linked.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anil, and thank you so much to all the delegates. Before we proceed further, Mr. Anil would like to show us the video. Would you like to tell a bit more about video? What is it about?
Yeah, so it is basically, a promotional video of Lumini. And basically, it's, without any narration, because I've already given you a lot of information. So it's basically visuals that will hopefully make sure that you plan, on visiting Lumini.
Thank you. So delicate. I would like you all to just now pay attention and see this wonderful video. Yes, so you all have already seen the video, and on behalf of Nepal Tourism Board and Mr. Anil, I would like to invite you all also after this pandemic time when Nepal is open. This is one of the places that you must consider to visit, not only to learn the history and to know depth about the Buddhism, but as well as you'll also get to see the beautiful, wonderful nature side, and like what Mr. Anil said, that is the place that you can get the photo of crane with Annapurna background. Yeah, so for today's session, thank you so much, Mr. Anil, for your time and for explaining it to us, and not forgetting to thank Nepal Tourism Board, our destination partner. Thank you, thank you. And if there is any further detail on this or anything that you would like to know more or any query, you can just drop an email to any of us or to me at dreamteam@pata.org. And for this session, if anyone have tuned in half of the in between and they have missed the beginning, not to worry, you can always rewatch the video again on the website at dreamtotravel@pata.org. Let me just show you what we have coming up next. The, the next session is going to be the life experience session, which is sponsored by Catalonia Tourism Board. They're going to show you the Catalan classic cooking show. Yes, it's like another interesting side that you get to see from Spain. So do not forget to tune in at 5 p.m. Bangkok time, ICT time, and the link is shared on the Zoom chat. You can pre-register yourself or just click on the link from our website. And if there is any query to this question, sorry, to this section, you all can just drop in the email to me or to any of us. And as I mentioned in between, that we will be sharing with all of you the presentation of this session to everyone who attended. So please stay tuned and wait for our email by latest next week on Monday. We will share with everyone through the email, and Mr. Anil has already shared his email. So if there is anything that you would like to ask him in regard to this session, you can just write to him. And once again, for anything related to Nepal, you can visit Nepal Tourism Board website, official website, which is www.welcometonepal.com. So for now, me, Monica, and my team, we would like to say bye and thank you so much for watching the whole video, the whole session. And I'll see you all again at 5. For now, thank you and bye-bye. Have a good day.